A year ago, Nigeria witnessed what many hailed as a turning point for grassroots governance in Nigeria. The Supreme Court delivered a bold ruling affirming the constitutional autonomy of local governments across the country. It declared in no uncertain terms that state governments had no right to withhold the funds meant for local councils, and that local governments must receive their allocations directly from the federation account. Must should be underlined. But fast forward today, and the reality is sobering. Implementation has been sluggish. Many states have simply refused to comply. Caretaker committees remain in place in a number of localities here and there, and at the grassroots, many Nigerians are still waiting to see the change that was promised. How far so far? Questions to ask. Why has the Supreme Court really not delivered the transformation we hoped for? Who is resisting the change, and at what cost to everyday Nigerians? And more importantly, what needs to be done now? In a country where we have an Algon, a NOLGE, and a few other civil society organizations with direct focus on grassroots governance in the country, how come we're where we are? Well, three gentlemen join us this morning. Let's begin with Dr. Otive Ikbuzo, who is Executive Director, African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development, Center LSD. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Doctor.
Center LSD. It's
yes,
my pleasure.
Yeah. And we also have Mr. John Mutu, who is Executive Director, African Parliamentary Resource Center, also right beside him. Both of them in our Abuja. Mr. Mutu, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Okay.
Thank you so much, Ayo. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning. So while we're talking about local government administration autonomy, let's let you know what's happening in Lagos right now very quickly before we plunge into the conversation. And what we can tell you is, as a result of the traffic backlog, as you can see, this is Ojudu Berger, and it's because, as we told you earlier, Lagos is on quote-unquote lockdown. No movements in and out, and these ones are supposedly coming from outside of Lagos, and that is the traffic. So, as we mentioned earlier, there are no movements, and the police will tell you that, look, you just got to be careful in the city of Lagos today. Any criminal intending to foment any kind of trouble, be on standby, because we are also on standby, and I don't think any one of us wants to go there. So that is the current reality, and the police are stopping some people to check, what's going on, and you see that it's not just still pictures, it's there are people moving on the screen, so it is real. Lagos means business as far as these local council elections are concerned. And several questions to be asked about how this is going to benefit the people. So if this effort has been made, ignore whatever the naysayers, the things that you may have known. Let's go out and vote. It is safe to go out and vote, no matter where you are in the city of Lagos. Please go out and vote, and all of us will be the better for it. All right. So, gentlemen, let's begin with you. We're still hoping that Mr. Adebuso will join us shortly. But let me begin with you, Mr. Mutu. This local government autonomy 1 year after, how does it come across to you? There were many expectations as to how quickly this would be resolved. And I know that you held quite a number of sessions, about how this should go and what could get in the way. What are your readings about how far so far?
Thank you so much, Ayo. I just remember with nostalgia the day the judgment was given, how Nigerians celebrated that judgment, how how we all, trooped out to congratulate Mr. President and the Attorney General of the Federation for that landmark judgment. Nigerians were quite happy and expected that at last, local governments will be able to perform their own constitutional duties. 1 year down the line, we are still asking what happened. And the question is, why did the federal government go to court in the first place if they were not ready to implement the judgment that they so sought? That for me is more of a worry, a worry that our democracy is under threat, a worry that our governance framework is under existential threat, because the judiciary serves two purposes. One, resolving disputes, and secondly, enforcing the law. And the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, and once the Supreme Court has given judgments, you can't appeal it. What we expect is compliance. And I remember the language of the judgment was immediately. So I'm surprised 1 year down the line, the federal government, who has a responsibility to implement that judgment, are still not taking that up. I remember a presidential committee was set up, to design the modalities for the implementation. And 1 year down the line, we have still not seen the report from that committee. If you talk to the Attorney General, he will tell you go to the SGF. You talk to this person, they will tell you it's the committee. So we are asking, what is delaying the judgment? Because it makes a caricature of the entire judgment. I remember my young age, when a court gives judgment, everybody said the court has spoken. The only thing you can do is to appeal. But once the Supreme Court has given judgment, there is nothing else anybody can do but to enforce compliance. I remember once upon a time, laws were passed by National Assembly or the state assemblies. Governors or president refused to implement. We were told that it's because they don't have constitutional backing. Once we have it in the Constitution, it will be implemented. Today, we have seen the Constitution being treated shabbily. We have seen constitutional provisions not implemented, both at the federal and the state level. So if judgments are not implemented, then where should the ordinary man go to seek resolution? And if this trend continues, it means that everybody will now resort to self-help because that dispute resolution mechanism has collapsed. And that is at the root of our governance and democratic system. So it's a big worry. And if this continues as we move into the 2027 elections, perhaps maybe this country will be engulfed in crisis because there will be no more belief. Nobody will believe in the justice system because there will be no justice. Two parties went to court, the federal government and the states. And the Supreme Court intervened and gave a firm resolution, judgment. Release funds meant for local government to them directly and immediately. Secondly, only states that have conducted local government elections should have access to the funds. 1 year down the line, not a single local government have had access to those funds. And today you hear this story, tomorrow you hear this. So where is justice?
Okay.
I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Dr. Igbuzo, the first question that I would like to ask you, because I know that you have been at the forefront of human rights activism for a bit, and this will definitely be something that's concerning. We know that civil society organizations advocate, all with the intention to ensure that things are done right by Nigerians. We have an association of local governments of Nigeria. We have a National Union of Local Government Employees, at the very least, those two. In your opinion, do you think there is nothing that could have been done by these two bodies alone to compel compliance of the Supreme Court ruling?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that I agree completely with John Mutu that what is happening is worrisome, but to me, it's not altogether surprising because it reflects the crisis of governance that is happening across the world. It reflects the democratic backsliding that we're witnessing across the world, and it reflects the elite capture of the state that we're witnessing across the world, especially in some countries like Nigeria. Civil society organizations have always been in the forefront of advocating for human rights, for justice, for accountability, and for good governance. Argon and Noge have been in the forefront of advocating for local government autonomy. However, it is not in their place to implement Supreme Court judgment. It's not in their place to enforce. They can only advocate. But like I said earlier, what is happening is a pattern and reflects crisis. And like John Mutu said, when we have a country where constitutions are breached without consideration, where judgments are ignored, and where what the ruling elite are doing is quite different from what ordinary citizens see, then it is a cause for concern. A few examples may suffice. In 2007, the National Assembly promulgated a Public Procurement Act 2007, which gives a recommendation, or which provides that there should be a procurement council for the country, made up of chairman and members, including a representative of civil society and media. From 2007 to 2025, a period of
18 years.
18 years. He survived Jonathan administration. It survived Yaradua. He survived Jonathan. He survived Buhari, and he has entered the Tinubu administration. Federal government has refused to implement that law. If you look at the Supreme Court judgment, you know, it also reflects a crisis within the judiciary and a crisis within the legislature. Because the Supreme Court judgment said that the money should be paid directly to the local government. Yet, there is still a provision which stipulates that there should be a joint account of state and local government through which all monies, that is the work of the Constitution, all monies will be paid. In fact, because the Constitution drafters envisaged that federal government will give allocation to local government, state governments will give allocation to local governments. But the reality we see is that state governments, instead of putting their own allocation, are now using the money from local government. In a decent system, after the Supreme Court judgment, the Parliament will immediately, to comply, you know, amend such sections of the Constitution to be in tandem with the jurisprudence and law. But what we see today, I want us to know that it's a pattern and historical, because the origin of local government itself came from undemocratic practice of the colonial administration. From the conquest of Lagos in 1861 to the 1930s, local government was, you know, put into the hands of a traditional ruler. One traditional ruler was the local government in many parts of the country, especially in the north. From 1930s to 1940s, they were a kind of some some reforms to ensure that it's not just one chief that is the local government, and they formed what they call chief in council and chief and council. The difference is that in chief in council, if the decisions of the council, the chief does not agree with it, he will override. But chief and council, the chief or the traditional ruler must abide by it. And then we went on to 1950 Eastern Nigeria Local Government Ordinance, 1952 Western Government Local Government Law, and 1954 Northern Nigeria Native Authority Ordinance. All of these are attempts to democratize the local government, which culminated in the 1976 local government reform that unified local government across the country. And then we came to 1979, when local government became a constitutional provision, and it provided that local government should be elected. And from 1976, establishment of local government as a third tier of government was constitutionalized in 1979. But what did we see? During the Shagari administration actually introduced the concept of sole administrator, when the constitution says that local government should be by election.
So then,
the
Dr.
executive will appoint sole administrators. And then that happened throughout the military regime, even though Babangida administration had tried to introduce this same reform we are talking about now by paying local government directly. So what am I trying to establish? That what we see is a pattern. But
does that mean, Dr. Igbuzo, does that mean that we are helpless? My apologies if you can hear me.
A pattern of not following laws.
Dr. Igbuzo, if you can hear me,
I agree.
Does that mean that we are stuck? Does that mean that we have no other way to go from here? Does that mean that we are hopeless? Who else is going to enforce this? If it is the job of the AGF and then or the SGF or something, what politics is being played? In fact, let me ask you, Mr. Mutu. So you may want to respond to what Dr. Igbuzo said about whether or not the ALGON, Association of Local Governments of Nigeria, could have done something, or whether NOLGE had the capacity to compel. Because in some cases, you know, Mr. Mutu, by now, NLC would have gone on strike and some stuff would have been done. Are we completely hopeless? Are we completely helpless? How about the political parties upon which these local government chairmen were employed? Even the state governors through which the local governments the state governors were recruited. Is there nothing that the political parties themselves could have done to compel their governors to abide by the ruling of the highest court in the land?
For me, if you ask me, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but the truth of the matter is that we are in a hopeless situation. And the only person that can change that situation is Mr. President. The buck stops on his table. He went to court. He is the chief enforcer of the laws of this land. He is the person that has the power and the authority to protect the sanctity of the law. He is the person given the mandate to ensure that rule of law thrives and the country remains stable. And if Mr. President has gone to court through his Attorney General and judgment has been given, who was that judgment directed at? It was directed at him. Implement immediately. Funds meant for local government should be paid directly to each local government. Who are we? It's not the governors. It's not NOLGE. It's not ALGON. And it's simple. A simple directive from the Accountant General. Stop all payments into JAC and pay to that local government directly. And what is required is all the local government present your account details for the monies to be credited. What is the rocket science about that? Okay, presidential committee in Nigeria will always set up committee. A presidential committee was set up to look at the modalities of implementation. And one of the issues that came out at that period was that, look, the timing, we are ready to implement, but the timing, there are certain operational issues that need to be put in place. While those account details are being fine-tuned and those operational issues are being fine-tuned, there is need to ensure that the machinery of governance does not grind to a halt, payment of teachers, local government workers. So from what we had, a 3-month moratorium was given to allow those operational issues. 3 months has become 1 year. So we are asking, Mr. President, what is stopping you from enforcing that judgment or implementing that judgment? We hear today CBN has said you must provide accounts. We hear tomorrow that you must provide audited accounts. Those were not part of the judgment. Those are your internal workings, that the matter is implemented. And I also remember the part that the judgment that was directed at the state governors. Over 95% of them have already done that. Local government elections must be conducted. And you also saw how governors quickly mobilized to conduct, because it was a prerequisite. If you want to continue to get this money, one, monies must go to you directly, but it's not automatic. For you to get that money, local government election must come, because with no local government that has caretaker committee or sole administrator should benefit from it. Those were the two issues. And most of the states went ahead in compliance, conducted those elections. So what then is stopping the implementation of the financial aspects? People say that maybe the president is under pressure from governors, governors are resisting, but the judgment, the implementation is not that of the governors. It is Mr. President's responsibility. So I will not look at the governor, I will not say it's the governors. Then coming to Algon and Nolge, they started an advocacy through the constitutional amendment process, which you are part of. We walked through that process. The National Assembly, quite gracious, went ahead and on 3 occasions amended that constitution to free up the local government to be able to function effectively from the firm grip of the state government. But each time it goes to the state assembly, because no amendment can scale through without being ratified by at least 24 state houses of assembly. But each time that goes to the state, we have never gotten that. In the last assembly, we got about 17. But I remember the governors, through the NGF, will always pressurize the state assemblies not to ratify that judgment. The question is why? What is that special thing that the governors are benefiting from the local government funds that they don't want to let go? The second question, why is it that when a governor is on seat, is against local government autonomy, but once he leaves that seat and gets to the National Assembly, he becomes an apostle of local government autonomy? All the former governors, I mean all, who resisted local government autonomy while they were governors, became apostles of local government autonomy when they get to the Senate. The question is why? Is there any personal interest in that? Why can't we free up that tier of government to make Nigerians at the grassroots benefit from the dividends of democracy? And I've always said, if you like, let Peter Obi, let it be whoever that becomes the president of this country. He will continue to struggle with development and governance challenges, except local governments are effective. After all, the federal government cannot be everywhere. The local government is at the base, the states are at the middle, the federal government is at the top. The president cannot be anywhere. So if the local government are not pulling their weight, are not using the resources to provide the services to the people, then everybody will continue to look on to Mr. President.
All right, let me come back to...
Why should somebody in Kauranamoda be looking up to Mr. President for sanitation?
That's
when that responsibility can be provided by the state government.
Yes, that's the worrying trend, Mr. Mutu. And let me come back to you, Dr. Igbuzo. Let's say an example you cited of the Babangida government trying to implement that reform that we are trying to get to now. And what I noticed at that time, Dr. Igbuzo, and it's one of the examples that I cite about how local governments can fast-track development in Nigeria. Because I was in Lagos, and I knew then that the Apapa local government, for instance, had a very thriving economic activities all over the state, all over the state. They had a bus service. There was the Lagos Island local government also had a bus service. I think that was even the first air-conditioned transport service I have seen, public transport service I have seen in this country by local governments. The local government administrations were the ones responsible for environmental pollution and ensuring that the people aligned with environmental laws. Today, we have flooding in Benue State. We have all kinds of flooding, destroying lives and property all over the place. And the natural thing is to trace such ecological challenges to lack of environmental cohesion. So is it that we don't know the benefits, Dr. Igbuzo, or we're just playing the ostrich?
I don't think that the reason is that we don't know the benefits. I think everyone who is a little bit knowledgeable knows that local governance is important and is necessary. In fact, all over the world, the concept of governance at the local level is well established. In some jurisdictions, it is local administration, where the local administration is appointed by other governments. But in some jurisdictions like Nigeria, it's local government, and they are elected just like the state government and the federal government. That is why in Nigeria, we call local government as the third tier of government. And it is not because people don't know that if local government works, there will be benefit to the citizens. If you look at the Constitution and you look at the functions of the local government, you will know that many of the problems we have as a country emanate from the fact that the basic things that local government are supposed to do is not being done. In many of the places, even in cities, street naming, you know, birth registration, marriage registration, death registration, simple things that are necessary from modern governance, you know, they are not being done and nobody cares about those things. Sanitation, you know, slaughterhouses, you know, markets, motor parks, public conveniences. God help you if you are, you know, in the city and you need to ease yourself. These are all responsibility, constitutional responsibilities of local government. But what do we see? These responsibilities are not done and nothing happens. And it's not only in local government. I've always argued that one of the challenges of governance in Nigeria is that development is not on the agenda. If you go to many states, I have done quite a number of budget analysis. If you analyze the budget of state governments, I've done extensive work and analysis of the budget of Bayelsa State and Delta State. What we found out is that the allocations to governor's office is more than allocation to 5 key ministries and departments. So, and if you go down and look at the budget, you know, you will see that majority of the budget items will not impact directly on the life of citizens. When we talk about even recurrent and capital expenditure, first, we always say that capital expenditure is too low to generate the kind of development that we want. But even if you look at what we call capital in Nigeria, the capital expenditure is bureaucratic capital, it's administrative capital. Because the building of the house for president, vice president, governor, chairman of a local government is considered as a capital. you know. So the issue is that development is not your agenda of government. What we need to do to change the narrative, both at the local government, the state government, and federal government, is to ensure that there is more accountability. And all over the world, there are 5 mechanisms for accountability. Number 1 is internal systems within ministries, departments, and agencies in terms of procurement procedures, financial circulars, ethics, ethical framework, and monitoring and evaluation. Number 2 is legislative oversight. For this legislation, both councillors, you know, councillors are local government. Anytime they want to impeach the chairman, it's because the chairman have not given them money. You don't see councillors debate budget, approve budget, and do oversight. So legislative oversight is key at the council level, at the state level, at the federal level. The third is independent institutions like the ICPC, EFCC. The fourth is the media. Responsibility to hold government account. And 5 is citizens group, and civil society organization. The challenge we have in Nigeria is that all of these 5 are not operating at optimum. In fact, there is a video trending on the social media now of a clerk of a committee in the National Assembly who argued that oversight in Nigeria is useless because the body you are doing oversight for will provide the ticket for your this thing, they will provide fund accommodation for you, and when they go there, they will give you money. And then when they come back, the chairman of the committee will doctor the report. It's on time. So until these 5 things, and that's why I'm even saying that this direct allocation to local government must be accompanied by strengthening of these 5 mechanisms. Otherwise, you will create another monster at the local level.
Well, one of the let me take some messages that have since come in, gentlemen, for us to have this conversation. Tom Egbele has this message. Says the non-implementation of the Supreme Court verdict is a dent on the image of the federal government of Nigeria. This matter and many others precipitate anarchy that is waiting to set in. It takes a nation to slug it out with despots and to say enough is enough. Mr. Mutu, you want to quickly comment on that?
To maybe call on Mr. President. Nigerians celebrated you for that bold move. I want to also call on the Attorney General of the Federation. You started a very, very noble cause. What previous presidents could not take on, you took the bull by the horn and you got judgment. Please rise above politics. Rise above every other constraint and see to the end of this matter. Free up the local government from the shackles of the current bondage that they face. And I want to also say it's not all the governors. Some of the governors are willing, but peer pressure has become an issue. And when you talk to some of these governors, and I've also attended forum where you will hear their defense, what they say is that local government, there is no capacity within the local government to manage those funds. And I ask, even among governors, there are people who say there is limited capacity. Imagine Mr. President rising up one day to say that we'll be managing state funds on your behalf. How would you feel? Build the capacity.
Absolutely.
It is the state that conducts local government election. It is your political, you are part of the leaders that determine who becomes the chairman.
Nominate people with capacity.
Make sure you nominate people with the right capacity to manage the local government. So that the right people are there to manage it. So that excuse does not hold ground.
Well, Mr. Mutu, on that,
some of these local government chairmen became governors.
My apologies,
somebody
Mr.
like
Mutu.
Wike was a local government chairman.
If you remember one of the things that I said
government chairman
earlier,
that became governors.
Well, just a second, Mr. Mutu, if you can hear me. That's one of the reasons that I was asking the other time, couldn't the political parties themselves have insisted that their governors, employed by the people through the recruiting platform of those political parties, couldn't they have compelled their governors to ensure that the needful is done?
But unfortunately, that is what we should have expected, but you know the reality.
Okay.
In a situation where you say the governor is the leader of the party, the governor and the president determine who becomes the chairman and who becomes who in a political
Well,
party.
there's another problem you just listed there.
Parties don't have the influence.
I have two other...
The political parties are funded by the governor and the president. So how do you expect them to do that, perform that role?
I was afraid you would say that.
Let me also add here, sorry, Ayo, before you go on.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, what I wanted to add is that ALGON as an institution is an association, right? And the membership of that association is elected local government chairmen. And these elected local government chairmen, each of them are under the control of the governors. We've seen instances where executive members of ALGON who dared to insist and take this advocacy forward are ensured that they don't return back to that seat. Look at the leadership of ALGON. If you talk to ALGON today, they are all now scared because they now know the implication.
Okay.
Once you are the president of ALGON or you are a very, very vocal executive of ALGON, a fellow governor will call and say, what is this boy doing there?
Okay, maybe that leads to this question.
I want to...
My apologies. I'll come back to you, Mr. Mutu. Just a second. I'll come back to you. That leads to this question, and I would like you to handle this, Dr. Guzol. Joseph Ubiabu is saying, commentaries about Supreme Court judgment on local government administration seems to be unmindful that the implementation cannot be effected without constitutional amendment. Blaming governors is disingenuous, he says. How do you respond to that, Dr. Egbuzo?
You know, I addressed that earlier, that there is a constitutional provision which is yet to be amended that says all funds should be paid into the state
joint account.
The joint account.
The JAC. Yep.
The JAC. But, you know, I don't think that it stops the implementation of the Supreme Court judgment. The Supreme Court, the fact that money should be paid into the joint account does not completely eliminate the need for local governments to receive their allocations as stated by the Supreme Court. But like I said earlier, yeah, I agree that it will necessitate the amendment of that section of the Constitution. And the National Assembly should rise to the occasion.
Okay.
But a judgment has been made. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, and it's incumbent on the authorities to implement the judgment of the Supreme Court.
Okay.
We are not blaming the state government for not implementing the judgment. As John Mutu has correctly stated, it is the federal government whose responsibility is to release the funds to comply with that judgment. But what we see is that the federal government is pandering to the issues, because we've read in the report that the governors has made some complaints to the president, and the president is listening to those complaints. Okay. You know, you cannot listen to complaint and fail to implement a Supreme Court judgment.
Okay.
What is this note? And yes. I think this is the point.
Well, there's a lot to say, gentlemen, but there's this message from Skittish Money who says, whereas the people we choose not to be accountable, let's stop making laws and regulations that we don't intend to follow, enforce, or obey. The worst thing any government can do to its citizens is to build a culture of impunity. And talking about impunity, I don't know whether this issue falls under it. We started the program today by talking about the local government elections in Lagos. And we understand that presiding officers and election officials are unable to leave for their stations because of inadequate supply of vehicles to transport them at the Ikosi Isheri Local Council Development Area. Speaking to one of the officers, it appears the transport provider was asked to provide a certain number of vehicles, which he claims he did, but the buses still weren't enough to transport all election officials. Last year, staff struggled to get into a bus. Some are hanging from the door of the bus. Some election officers have resorted to trekking to their polling stations, and one even said, they told us it's not far from here, so we can trek there. Well, what we mentioned earlier is this mild drama you're seeing here at the Judiciary LCDA, where presiding officers and election officials were unable to leave their stations because the vehicles provided for them were not enough. We spoke with one of the officers who said the transport provider seems to not have been able to provide a number of buses that were required. But even though he did, the vehicles are still not enough. And that's the reason for all of this struggle that you are seeing right now. Olu Phillips, our correspondent, is on standby at another location right now to give us an update on what's going on the streets of Lagos as the election proceeds. The local council development elections, beg your pardon, the local council elections proceed. Olu Phillips, good morning. Where are you? Location. Olu Phillips is on standby. Olu, let's know where you are and what's going on right now.
Good morning. I think the safe place to start is to talk about the relief we have this morning. In the last 2-3 days and 1 week in Lagos, traffic has been very, very harrowing, and it has to do with the construction or reconstruction and maintenance on the bridge around Ogudu. So those who tried to get home yesterday, very late in the evening, midnight, 1 a.m., people were still in traffic on Ikorodu Road, on Oshodi axis, or Uroshoki axis. And so it's such a relief to see that Lagos can be this calm. We look forward to times like this as journalists, where you can actually drive and get to all your centers in one bit. But talking about what's happening here today, we've been to a couple of polling units today, and we've just seen, other than the officers, electoral officers and polling officers, we've not seen voters coming to either have their accreditation done or even voting, as it were. So we tried to figure out what's going on. We drove to the Ikeja local government secretariat, and we still noticed that materials are still yet to, some materials, especially the voting materials, are yet to leave the secretariat. We actually had pictures and videos captured of officers trying to leave, buses waiting to be loaded with officers and those who are, and the materials, sensitive materials, as it were. So that's the situation. Other than people having to stay back at home, activities around here under Ikeja Bridge where we are, those who are eating, those who are playing music, and I don't know if these are not voting age people, but we're not seeing that activity. Yeah, you can say it's a local government election, but politics is local, governance is local, development is local, so this is very critical. And if you take into consideration what the direction of government is, as it were, when it tries to do something around local government autonomy, perhaps this is the first local government elections that have been held after that Supreme Court judgment, giving very strong autonomy to the local government. So this should be a real test of what governance should be in terms of elective positions and those to be elected. And I should assume that citizens should actually pay more attention to these kind of elections. Ayo.
Well, that's a good play. In fact, that's what we've been discussing following that Supreme Court ruling. It was exactly 1 year since yesterday. But from what you can see, what kind of turnout are you observing, Olu? You talked about some people who are supposedly of voting age, and they don't seem to be voting right now. From what you can see and what you know in the build-up to this very election day, do you see any semblance of voter education or voter awareness of what is happening this morning?
Ayo, I don't know whose responsibility this is, other than the things we have tried to do here on Channels Television as a corporate organization, saddled with responsibility of informing people daily through our live programs, through sunrise programs, morning brief, Politics Today in the evening, our News at 10 flagship, telling people what to know, how to know what to know, what to do, at what time. But when it comes to this issue around election, I don't understand why we kind of continue to see a lull and apathy on the part of those who actually should be making the change through their voter card. I don't know when that miracle is going to happen. They put in the say it's in the 80s. I'm just going to flip the camera around so you see what we're talking about. So right behind me, you see a lot of activities. These are adults who are supposed to change the livelihood, their livelihood, the developmental structure of the country, participate in it, and be a part of it by a civic responsibility of just coming out for a few hours, make your vote count, cast it, and wait for the results. So at the end of the day, it seems like elections are just left into the hands of those who have clearly indicated to be party members. When it is not a party member affair, or if you're not affiliated to any party, we struggle to see people who pay attention to things like this. It's a worry. It's a worry for me.
Well, it's a huge concern for everyone all over the nation, and let's just hope that at some point, all of us would realize that if we don't do our best, if we don't do our bit, that popular saying, that the worst of us will continue to lead, the best of us will continue. Thank you so much, Olu, for your reporting, and I know that you're still all about town. We'll wait to hear more from you shortly. Yeah. All right, well, let me come back to you, gentlemen, in our Abuja studio, our final moments. Dr. Igbuzo, I bring this to you. What's your take on, I'm sure you heard my colleague who's been all over the place trying to get a feel. So, on the one hand, the federal government won a case in the Supreme Court for the benefit of the people. On the other hand, is the drama you have just heard about. Some kind of juxtaposition here?
Yes, you are right. It's a global challenge. Increasingly, the percentage of people who belong to political parties is decreasing across the world. And the level of participation of citizens and the influence that they wield within the political arena is also decreasing across the world. That is why we talk about the concept of elite capture of the state. And in Nigeria, it is particularly worrying and disturbing because of the trend in elections, particularly in local government elections. What we have seen, Lagos State is having local government election today. In the 2023 elections, there were some political parties that in some of the elections had more votes than APC. But the normal thing we are going to see is that APC, because it's the government in power in Lagos State, is going to declare all the local government chairmen as APC candidate, all the councillors as APC candidate. And this is the pattern across the country.
Okay.
In Delta State, before the defection of the APC leaders to, PDP leaders to APC, when they conduct elections, even when the gubernatorial election, they declared elections, they declared result, we had about 60% for the gubernatorial election. We had 60%.
Dr. Guzo, at least let the people come out and vote. Maybe if the people came out to vote, my apologies if you can hear me. Maybe if the people came out to vote, the voice of the people will be too loud for anyone to deny. But closing moments, as I said, Mr. Mutu, let me have you respond to this one very quickly. Kingsley Ogwuanyi is writing in and he says, I've been listening to your program on the local government autonomy. My take remains that as long as our judiciary depends on the political system rather than being independent institutions, implementation of most judgments will continue to be a political thing. If it doesn't benefit the political system, then it won't be implemented or obeyed. Kingsley believes that the judicial system is flawed completely and no hope for the common man anymore. I know you don't agree with him, but your final take on that one. Mr. Mutu, that's for you.
Okay, maybe just to quickly frame 4 quick issues, not necessarily focus on that alone. Number 1, responding to the issue of the National Assembly amending the Constitution. I'm aware, and because maybe I'm privileged to be part of that process, currently, if you had attended the public hearing, you will see that one of the bills rightly announced before the National Assembly that was presented to the public is the Local Government Autonomy Bill, which seeks to amend the Constitution to reflect the spirit and letters of the Supreme Court judgment. So hopefully, by the time this process goes through, if the state assemblies vote in favor of it, then they will be able to amend that, especially abolishing JAC. The second issue that is of no doubt is that there has been this question whether Nigeria operates a 2-tier of government or a 3-tier of government. Do we have in our federal system, is it 2 tiers or 3 tiers? The Supreme Court judgment is clear on that we have 3 tiers of government, federal, state, and local government. So if we have 3 tiers of government, then all the tiers must be empowered to so act with each of them with their clearly defined functions and mandates. And it's based on that the judgment says, let the fundings, payments, local government money should be paid directly to them. Just like the federal government gets its own share from the federation account, the state government gets its own share from and local government should also get their own directly. I think that is the idea. Number 3, for me, is also to mention that Mr. President has a responsibility to ensure that the confidence of the people on the judiciary, on the sanctity of the judiciary is restored. And this is an urgent call. If people lose faith in the justice system, then people will begin to resort to self-help. Why do I need to go to courts? So in Nigeria, especially in the electoral system, what everybody now starts doing is win by all means, let's meet in court. If you don't like, go to court. It's because people have lost faith in the judicial system. So the president has a responsibility to make sure that the rule of law prevails. Then the sanctity of the Constitution is also important. The Constitution, as amended, says that financial autonomy provides for the financial autonomy of the state houses of assembly and that of the judiciary. This was done as far back as the 9th Assembly. 4 years down the line, the state governments have refused to implement financial autonomy for state house of assembly, have refused to release the money meant for state house of assembly directly to them. The same thing is happening with the local government. If we allow this trend to continue, it will not augur well for our democracy. And then second to the last one I want to mention is a call on our governors. You are leaders of our country. Serve you better than what the failed system that we have currently. Most of the pressures, the crimes perpetrated in the state headquarters is by people who move from the rural areas. The rural-urban migration we are currently seeing is it has a direct correlation with the failure of governance at the local government level. Instead of going to the local government headquarters, everybody is now going to the state capital. It brings pressure on the infrastructure at the state level and also breeds crime in the state. Let there be a decentralization of activities, governance activities. Let all the local government be functional, and it will reduce pressure on the state government. And lastly, to the judiciary. They said the judiciary is the last hope of the common man. The judiciary really needs to rise to the occasion. Nigerians are losing faith in you fast. You must be clear on your judgment. If you say A, let your A be A. Don't allow judgment to be misinterpreted. Imagine the judgment that the Federal High Court judgment on the Natasha case. I was reading that judgment yesterday, and I heard a judge saying that I think, I believe. So what is the judgment? And that is why the National Assembly was saying we were waiting for the, what do they call it? The CTC, because we want to really understand. And when I looked at the CTC, I said, is this the judgment? Your judgment is supposed to be declaratory and not leaving room for people to apply their own That is why all the judgment across the country, you hear the judgment is given, every party will now be interpreting it to mean different things. There is a need for the Attorney General, Mr. President, and the judiciary to sit down to quickly arrest this situation before we get to the precipice.
Well, gentlemen, it's should I call it another conversation starter? Because it's an endless one. Well, I have to thank you, gentlemen, for being here this morning. John Mutu is Executive Director, African Parliamentary Resource Center, as well as Dr. Ochive Igbuzo, who is Executive Director, African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development, called Center LSD. Gentlemen, we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you very much. It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
A focus on the local government elections in Lagos when we return from this break.